This isn't your typical credit advice. This is a story of a man who did everything right according to conventional wisdom, only to watch his credit score plunge deeper into the abyss. It's a counterintuitive, slightly shocking, and deeply personal journey into the hidden algorithms of financial identity. Forget what you think you know. This is what happens when the system fights back. The final transfer was a click, a simple, antiseptic click of a mouse button. After 7 years, 2 months, and 14 days, the last outstanding balance of $42,819.76 vanished from my credit card statement. The digital screen refreshed, displaying a glorious, incontrovertible zero. In that silent, suspended moment, a physical weight I had carried for nearly a decade simply dissolved. I leaned back in my chair, a wave of pure, unadulterated triumph washing over me. I had done it. I had climbed out of a hole I'd spent my 20s digging. The celebration was quiet, personal. I did not go out. I opened a bottle of sparkling water, not champagne, and toasted the empty room. I thought of the sacrifices etched into those years. The vacations declined, the restaurant invitations politely refused, the constant low-grade anxiety that served as a background hum to every financial decision. My social life had atrophied. My hobbies had become whatever was free. Every extra dollar was a soldier conscripted into this war of attrition against compound interest. That night, I slept with the profound, weary peace of a soldier who believes the war is finally, unequivocally over. The next morning, fueled by a sense of righteous closure, I performed my new ritual. It was a ritual born of obsession during the debt payoff journey, logging into the credit monitoring app. For years, I had watched the score twitch upward with each paid down balance, a slow, gratifying climb. Today, I expected a victory lap. I anticipated a soaring eagle, a numerical symphony hitting its final, triumphant chord. I clicked the refresh button with the confidence of a conductor awaiting applause. The number that loaded onto the screen did not compute. It was not a modest gain. It was not a plateau. It was a catastrophic collapse. My score had plummeted by 74 points. My first reaction was not anger, but a blank, cognitive dissonance. I checked the date, thinking there must be some historical glitch. I closed the app and reopened it. The number remained, a cold, digital taunt. A flush of heat traveled up my neck. This had to be an error, a cruel, systemic mistake. I had just executed the most financially responsible act of my adult life, and the system's response was a punitive slap. The feeling of betrayal was immediate and visceral. It was as if I had meticulously repaired a revered clock, only for it to shatter in my hands the moment I set the correct time. A frantic, hour-long investigation commenced. I pulled my full reports from all 3 bureaus, my eyes scanning line by line. There was no error. No late payment had mysteriously appeared. No new account had been fraudulently opened. The reports confirmed my reality. Every account was closed and marked paid as agreed. The evidence of my discipline was there, yet the score, the only metric that seemed to matter to the outside world, told a different story. It narrated a tale of sudden, increased risk. The triumph of the previous night curdled into a sickening dread. The financial freedom I had fought for now felt like a trap. If being debt-free made me less creditworthy, what was the entire point? The foundational premise of my struggle, that good behavior begets good results, lay shattered. A profound confusion set in, tinged with a new, unfamiliar fear. I had won the war, but the scorecard, the arbiter of my financial identity, labeled me a loser. This was the shock, not a setback, but a fundamental contradiction. It was the unsettling realization that the rules of the game were not what I had believed, and that my hard-won solvency might have inadvertently triggered a silent, algorithmic alarm. The path forward was no longer clear. It first required understanding why the very system designed to measure financial health could interpret recovery as a failure. In the days that followed, my initial anger and confusion slowly hardened into a grim determination. The system had spoken, and its verdict felt unjust. But justice, I began to realize, was irrelevant. I was not dealing with a moral judge, but with a complex, impersonal prediction model. My credit score was not a report card evaluating my past conduct. It was a proprietary algorithm designed to forecast one thing: the statistical likelihood that I would fail to repay a future debt. My actions, while morally sound, had altered the data points that fed that prediction in ways I had never anticipated. My first breakthrough came when I stopped searching for errors and began researching credit scoring factors. I descended into a world of white papers from Fair Isaac Corporation and analyses of Vantage score models. The familiar pillars were there: payment history, amounts owed, length of credit history, new credit, and credit mix. I had focused obsessively on the first two, believing them to be paramount. I had perfected my payment history and reduced my amounts owed to zero. What I failed to comprehend was how the other three factors worked in concert, and how my decisive victory had inadvertently crippled them. The most devastating blow was to my credit mix. This factor, accounting for about 10% of a typical score, assesses the diversity of your credit accounts. The logic is not about rewards, but about risk assessment. To a scoring model, a borrower who has successfully managed different types of credit, revolving credit like credit cards, and installment credit like auto loans or mortgages, presents a more predictable and less risky profile. By paying off and closing every single credit card, I had eliminated all my revolving accounts. My report now showed only a single and aging auto loan. I had transformed my credit portfolio from a diversified ecosystem into a monoculture. Imagine a restaurant reviewer who only ever samples the soup. No matter how excellent the soup, the reviewer cannot confidently assess the chef's full range of ability. To the algorithm, I was now a one-note borrower, and that introduced a new layer of statistical uncertainty. This was compounded catastrophically by the second factor: length of credit history. The scoring models don't just look at your oldest account. They calculate the average age of all your accounts. Those credit cards I had closed weren't just debt instruments. They were repositories of time. Several were over a decade old, silent witnesses to my financial adulthood. When I closed them, I didn't just erase balances. I erased history. They were immediately removed from the average age calculation. My once mature credit profile, with an average age of perhaps 9 years, suddenly collapsed to reflect only the age of my remaining auto loan. My credit history didn't just get shorter, it underwent a radical, artificial rejuvenation, making me look like a far less experienced borrower than I actually was. I had, in the system's eyes, voluntarily amputated my own financial track record. The final, cruelest twist involved credit utilization. For years, I had battled to keep this number below 30%. The final payoff had brought my revolving utilization to a perfect 0%. This, I learned, was not the optimal outcome. While high utilization is a clear red flag, a utilization of 0% can be ambiguous. It does not distinguish between a disciplined borrower who uses cards sparingly and pays them off, and an inactive or abandoned account. To the predictive model, an account showing no activity may not provide useful data about current borrowing behavior. It signals neither risk nor reliability. It signals a lack of recent data. By zeroing out and closing all my cards, I had not demonstrated superior management. I had effectively gone radio silent. The algorithm, built to analyze patterns of behavior, was now staring at a void where my most active financial data once existed. The shocking truth crystallized. I had interpreted my credit report as a historical ledger. The scoring model used it as a predictive engine. In my quest for the perfect, debt-free history, I had systematically removed the very data points the model needed to confidently predict my future reliability. I had not made a mistake. I had committed a strategic miscalculation based on a flawed premise. The score didn't drop because I was less responsible. It dropped because, from the algorithm's perspective, I had become more of an enigma. The peace of being debt-free was a human concept. The algorithm perceived only a sudden shift in the data pattern, a pattern that now suggested inexperience, lack of diversification, and uncertain engagement. My frustration began to evolve into a bleak, grudging respect for the machine's cold logic. The battle was no longer against my past debts, but for control over a new narrative written in a language of data and probability. Armed with this unsettling new understanding, my mission shifted. It was no longer about debt elimination, but about behavioral signaling. I had to consciously, carefully craft a financial profile that the algorithm would not just accept, but favor. This required a series of deliberate, almost clinical steps that felt counterintuitive to my hard-won instincts for austerity. I was not returning to spending. I was engineering a data set. The first step was the most psychologically difficult, the strategic reinstatement. I had to reintroduce a revolving credit line, but with absolute discipline. I identified the credit card from my closed accounts that had been the oldest and, crucially, had the highest credit limit. I prepared for the call like a negotiation, focusing on data, not emotion. When the representative answered, I explained my situation succinctly. I had closed my account after paying it in full, but I now understood the value of maintaining a long-standing credit relationship with their institution. I requested the account be reinstated, not with a new account number, but with its original history and limit restored. I emphasized my perfect payment history with them. The process took persistence, escalations to supervisors, and a hard credit inquiry, but it succeeded. This single act was pivotal. It resurrected a decade of credit history from the grave, immediately boosting my average age of accounts. With this loan reinstated card in hand, I moved to building an artificial ecosystem. The card was not for discretionary use. Its purpose was purely functional, to generate a flawless, predictable, and minimal data stream. I selected one small, fixed monthly bill, a streaming service subscription costing under $20. I set up an automatic payment from this credit card to the service. Then I set up an automatic, full monthly payment from my checking account to the credit card, scheduled to pay the balance 2 days after the charge posted. This created a closed, self-liquidating loop. To the credit bureaus and the scoring algorithm, this activity signaled an active, responsibly managed revolving account with a utilization rate consistently below 2%. I was no longer a silent, inactive risk. I was a predictable, low-volume transaction machine, demonstrating perfect management without carrying a meaningful balance or paying a cent in interest. Recognizing that one card was not enough to rebuild a robust profile, I explored leveraging trusted history. I approached family member with an exceptionally long and impeccably managed credit card account. With complete transparency, I explained my strategic goal. I was not seeking access to their credit line, but a temporary boost to my credit history's length and overall credit limit. I asked to be added as an authorized user on their account. They agreed, understanding I would never possess or use the physical card. Upon the next reporting cycle, their account's entire history, from the date it was opened and its generous credit limit, were added to my report. This was a powerful, passive boost that enhanced both my average age of accounts and my overall credit utilization ratio without any liability for me or risk for them, as they retained full control. Finally, to address the glaring lack of credit mix and inject a new, positive payment stream, I turned to a credit builder loan. I visited a local credit union and applied for this specific product. The mechanism is ingeniously counterintuitive. The loan proceeds, say $1,000, are placed into a locked savings account held by the credit union. You make fixed monthly payments toward the loan over a 12 or 24-month term. Only after the loan is fully repaid do you receive access to the money, plus a small amount of interest. Each on-time payment is reported to the credit bureaus, establishing a new, positive installment loan history. For me, it was not a source of funds, but a purchase data point. I was paying a minimal fee, the difference between the loan interest and the savings interest, to rent a perfectly structured installment trade line, proving I could handle a fixed, recurring obligation. This 4-part strategy formed a holistic rehabilitation protocol. The philosophy was no longer about avoidance, but about controlled, strategic engagement. I was not building credit in the traditional sense. I was constructing a pattern of diverse, predictable, and flawlessly executed financial behaviors. I was speaking the algorithm's language with perfect grammar, demonstrating history, managing revolving credit actively but minimally, showcasing a mix of account types, and generating a stream of pristine payment data. The goal was to transform from an enigmatic high-risk outlier back into a textbook example of low-risk, predictable behavior. It was a quiet, meticulous campaign waged not in checkbooks, but in data fields. The results of this engineered strategy did not materialize overnight. The first month brought only a tentative, almost imperceptible halt to the decline. The second month yielded a modest 5-point increase. It was a frustratingly slow process, a stark contrast to the dramatic plunge that had initiated it. I had to consciously divorce my self-worth from the weekly fluctuations on the credit monitoring dashboard. I was no longer a passive observer of my score. I was a technician observing the output of a complex machine I had carefully recalibrated. The key was consistency, allowing the automated systems I had built to run silently in the background, month after month. Then, around the fourth month, the momentum shifted. The positive reporting from the reinstated card, the impeccable payment history on the credit builder loan, and the bolstered profile from the authorized user account began to interact synergistically. The increases became more substantial, 10, then 15, then 20 points in a single cycle. The day my score finally surpassed its pre-payoff high was profoundly anticlimactic. There was no fanfare, only a quiet, solid vindication. The number continued to climb, eventually settling into a range significantly higher than I'd ever achieved during my deepest years of debt. The financial victory, once so narrowly defined by a zero balance, was now quantified by a 3-digit score that genuinely reflected stability. However, the true transformation extended far beyond that number. The first tangible benefit arrived in the mail. Pre-approval offers for credit cards with terms and reward structures that were previously unimaginable. I reviewed them not with desire, but with analytical detachment, recognizing them as market validation of my new statistical profile. A more significant impact came at my next insurance renewal. My auto insurance premium dropped by nearly 20%. The agent explained it matter-of-factly. My updated credit-based insurance score had moved me into a lower risk tier. This was a direct, financial reward for my strategic rebuild, saving me hundreds annually. When I later applied for a new apartment lease, the process was seamless. The background check returned instantly with a glowing recommendation. The property manager's demeanor shifted from procedural to welcoming, a subtle acknowledgement of the financial credibility my profile now conveyed. These experiences catalyzed a fundamental mindset shift. My perspective on credit underwent a complete metamorphosis. I no longer viewed debt as a monolithic evil to be vanquished at all costs. I began to see credit as a system utility, a powerful, neutral tool for financial signaling and leverage, much like the electrical grid. The goal was not to live completely off-grid, but to understand the system's protocols, manage its connections with precision, and ensure its operation served my long-term stability and growth. The paralyzing fear of credit was replaced by a respect for its mechanics and a confidence in my ability to navigate them. This new understanding brought with it a sobering sense of responsibility. The strategy that rescued my score is a double-edged sword. It is a surgical protocol, effective only when applied with absolute discipline and a foundational commitment to living within one's means. The reinstated credit card, if used impulsively, could become the genesis of a new debt spiral. The authorized user status requires unwavering trust. The credit builder loan is only beneficial if the payments are immaculate. This is not a path to cleverly gaming the system for more spending power. It is a structured method for repairing and optimizing one's financial data after achieving true solvency. In undisciplined hands, these same tactics could accelerate a journey back into financial distress. The ultimate lesson was not how to trick the algorithm, but how to align my financial behavior so perfectly with the model's definition of low risk that my score became an authentic, unshakable reflection of my stability. The fear of the system was replaced by the empowerment of understanding it, and the profound caution that such understanding demands. So, where does this leave us? More importantly, where does it leave you? My journey is a single data point in a vast impersonal system. It illustrates a critical, often overlooked truth. Achieving financial solvency and optimizing your creditworthiness are related but distinct endeavors. The former is about balance sheets. The latter is about behavioral signaling. One is an economic reality. The other is a linguistic performance in the dialect of risk algorithms. You can master the first and still fail the second, as I did, watching your reward become a penalty in the cold calculus of a FICO score. This is not an anomaly. It is a pattern. Every day, individuals emerge from the long tunnel of debt repayment only to find themselves in a new kind of wilderness, where their hard-won freedom doesn't translate into the trust of the financial ecosystem. They are debt-free, yet locked out of favorable rates, ideal housing, or optimal insurance terms. Their story hits a plateau, or worse, a cliff, because the narrative of their financial comeback is missing key chapters the system expects to read. What is the narrative of your financial data currently telling? Are you the before, struggling with the weight of balances, or perhaps navigating the confusing silence after paying them off? Or are you crafting your after, building a profile of such undeniable, patterned reliability that the system has no choice but to respond with opportunity? This is the work we do. My story is merely one variation on a theme. On Credit Comeback Stories, we deconstruct these narratives. We move beyond simplistic tips and generic advice. We analyze the anatomy of a credit score not as a report card, but as a living profile. We examine real, nuanced journeys, the unexpected drops, the strategic rebounds, the psychological hurdles, and the tactical victories. We provide the why behind the number, so you can understand the levers of your own financial identity. Therefore, this is not an ending, but an invitation to change your data's narrative. Subscribe to the Credit Comeback Stories channel. On this platform, we transform confusion into clarity and setbacks into strategy. We delve into the complexities of credit mixes, the nuances of aging metrics, and the strategic use of financial tools not for debt, but for demonstration. Activate notifications. The journey to a robust financial profile is ongoing, and we consistently release content designed to guide you through each phase, from debt management and score repair to advanced optimization and leveraging credit for genuine wealth building. You will not want to miss an analysis that could unlock the next stage of your own comeback. Your financial resurgence deserves an audience that understands its complexity. Your next chapter deserves a strategy that is informed, deliberate, and empowered. Let us shift the paradigm together, from being passive subjects of a score to becoming authoritative authors of our own financial stories. Join our community. Let's move from shock to strategy together.